Power, Power Malu, and Ben Ramos, and Norma. So each of them will say a few small message.
Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia
para Puerto Rico.
Independencia
Para Puerto Rico.
Independencia
Para Puerto Rico.
USA
Out of Puerto Rico. USA. Out of Puerto Rico. USA. Out of Puerto Rico.
That is why we are here today, familia para Puerto Rico. Right now we are changing that Hammershot Plaza to a piece of liberated Puerto Rico. Today you're gonna hear from speakers from all over the diaspora, from over the island, coming together, unified in one voice. And that voice is saying, Independencia!
Para Puerto Rico.
Independencia!
Para Puerto Rico.
I bring to the stage our sister Norma Irán Perez of Call to Action on Puerto Rico.
Yo soy el compañero Ben Ramos de Pro Libertad Freedom Campaign, sorry. Yo voy a seguir las consignas. Independencia.
Para Puerto Rico.
Independencia.
Para Puerto Rico.
¿Cuándo es?
Ahora es.
¿Y cuándo es?
Ahora es.
Una vez más venimos a las Naciones Unidas a presentar nuestras ponencias en favor de la independencia de Puerto Rico. Estamos aquí conglomerados para llevar una sola voz, un solo mensaje de que la descolonización tiene un nombre y se llama independencia. ¡Independencia!
Para Puerto Rico.
¡Independencia!
Para Puerto Rico.
¡Yankee! 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 ¡Fuera! ¡Yankee! ¡Go home! Gracias.
I would like to start off by reading what I read inside the United Nations this morning when we were faced with the gusano, Ricky Rosselló, who dares to continue to claim that he represents the people of Puerto Rico. And I just want to share with you guys who didn't have an opportunity to listen in or to tune in to what was said, but we made sure that they felt our presence and that they were very uncomfortable, because that's what we got to continue to do. We can't allow these people to feel comfortable in their demise of our people. So I started, my name is Power Malu. I represent El Grito, I represent El Frente, I represent my people, todos los Boricuas, and our ancestors. Today, I'm addressing the special committee on the situation with regard to the implementation of the Declaration on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples. This is not the special committee for granting annexation, nor the special committee for the continuation of colonization at the hands of the same colonial government that has oppressed the Puerto Rican people for over 120 years. We've seen the same pattern over and over again, where words and terminology such as decolonization and self-determination get hijacked and twisted around to confuse and manipulate the people. Puerto Rico was removed from the decolonization list, but the colonial state persists, so we must continue to resist. Their deception then has now been exposed, the same way Dr. Don Pedro Albizu Campos exposed Dr. Rhodes. From 1948 to 1957, they criminalized the idea of Puerto Rican independence. That law made us gag. They tried to change the meaning of our flag, but we hold our heads high and we don't let her drag. We make them uncomfortable with our revolutionary spirit, and so they watered down La Borinqueña lyrics. It's esoteric on the surface, but some research will reveal the revolutionary lyrics by Lola Rodriguez de Tio. They said we were no longer a colony in 1952, but in 2022, they still tell us what to do. There's a sham congressional delegation elected by only 3.9% of the voting population, lobbying for annexation, the culmination of colonization. This fake delegation is led by the head of the disgraced former administration who was ousted from power in 2019 by the people's indignation. Yo soy boricua, pa que tú lo sepa. There was a recent celebration and affirmation of our nationality and our nation, a right protected by the UN Human Rights Declaration. Puerto Rico no se vende, Puerto Rico se defiende. On this U.S. holiday to commemorate Juneteenth, aka Freedom Day, I say, free Puerto Rico, we deserve to be free. It's time to take this case to the UN General Assembly. Respectfully, Pau Malu, que viva Puerto Rico libre. And now, our brother Dr. Drum will bless us in between our presenters.
Thank you, Power. Thank you. That was beautiful. So, today, yes. So, thank you, Ruha, for you're gonna do what you always do. Represent. You always represent. So, you know, when we come this with our drum, when we come with our choir, when we come with our maraca, we don't come to entertain. It starts first with the maraca. And why? So this instrument, the maraca, not being a Spanish word, being a Taino word, is to say what was first for us. Before it became Puerto Rico, it was Borinque. And so the maraca is very symbolic. And if you haven't played it yet, you should. And it's not a minor percussion as it is stated here in this country. It is a major voice for our people. That's the difference of being conscious of your roots. And so when we play the maraca, it's to remind us what was first. And unfortunately, what was second was our colonized language. And that's why we're speaking Spanish. But then there's that other part that kept us going and that helped us navigate through all this, and is still here today, which is our African roots that's symbolic in the drum. This is why we do bomba. Not to do piquetes, no. It's to understand that this is who we are. And this, you know, a lot has been displaced that as you go home and turn on the radio in your car, there's maybe 5 or 7 Latin stations, you don't hear bomba. You still don't hear it, right? So this silence crime, this silence oppression that still keeps us not understanding the bomba. That inner voice of our people, of our history. That's why we do this. So if we're gonna unite, we have to sing together. If we don't sing together, then we're not keeping it real, right? That's why we do this. So I know that La Bruja is gonna play that kwa, because another instrument, another word that comes from the Taino roots, the kwa, that represents that history. Good, keep going, good, beautiful. Now, I need everybody to just keep all the way, don't stop. All the way, there you go, man. And everybody just follow after me. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. A little bit louder. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, ahora sí voy a tocar. Liberté con la bomba boricua. Oye, liberté, liberté. Ahora sí. Liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, con los barriles, con los guas. Ay, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, llegaron los boricuas, ahora tú verás. Con la bomba vamos a la libertad. Oye, liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, con los barriles, guay y maracá. Llegó la bomba, bomba boricua. ¿Qué dice? Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, ahora sí voy a cantar para mi gente boricua. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, para cantar, para bailar, con su bandera vamos a levantar. Oye, liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, con la bomba vamos a cantar. Ay, liberté con la bomba boricua. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, con los barriles, guay, maracá. Hoy llegamos, ay, los boricuas. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Con la bomba boricua y la bruja tocando la cua. Oye, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Si quiere bailar, ven a bailar. Pica ahora la bomba boricua. ¿Qué dice? Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Ay, liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. Liberté, liberté, liberté con la bomba boricua. El coro y este coro. Aquí está. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to bring up my brother Mark Rain up here to represent. We've had some deep discussions about how we're going to get the word out to our people, to unify our people. Because as we see, a lot of people are quick to come out for the parade and the festivals and things like that, but they're not really aware as to what's going on in our island and how easily it's being taken from us. And so I want to give the platform to my brother Mark Rain.
Oh, can I get a round of applause for Pablo Malu, please, and Bombay, yo. Appreciate the energy. If I wasn't holding this flag, I would have been up in there. I was about to go in, and I was like, this thing is kind of heavy. Mi gente, I'm gonna segue. My name is Mark Rain. I'm from El Barrio, Spanish Harlem. I came here to say a few things. First, I want to explain the outfit. Like he said, I saw Paramount, he was like, I need all the Puerto Ricans that were there for the Puerto Rican weekend on the festival and the parade, keep that same energy. I said, word. This is how I was there. For the festival and the parade, like this. Captain Body. I want to elaborate a little bit, but I want to introduce to y'all my flag. See a lot of people looking. My sister designed this. It's the Boricua Excellence flag. What does it represent? My angle in this movement is love. It's unity, awareness. You understand? I don't have a lot of time, but as you all know, we've been divided for far too long in so many ways. You know, between the bodies here in America and the bodies on the island, even. We're divided in the spelling of Boricua. I spell it with the Q because my mother was born and raised in Ponce and she was raised to understand that Boricua is spelled with the Q. It honors the Taínos because the island was Borinquen with the K and the N and the Q. Go and try to find history on why we spell it with a C. There's not much. To me, the C represents the colonization, represents the change still on us, the C of America. And so that's why I spelled Boricua Excellence with the Q. But regardless of how you want to spell it, we have to come together. You understand? I'm here to wake us up and understand, get all of us to understand that before we win the war in resistance, we have to win the war against ourselves. It's always us against us. Is that not why we're here? For Ridiculous Ricky? They always put us against us. And you know why? Because we don't hold each other down enough. If this was in his life, in his heart, he would not have been bought out at the sacrifice of the island and his people. Right? So we have to come together. We have to figure this out. Right? How we come together and create a bucket that we could throw in. Right? It's not about blaming anybody for what has happened. We have to know the history. It's up to us to teach us the history. Puerto Ricans on the island don't even know Pedro Albizu Campos, Ramon Emeterio Betances. You know, even the movements here from the Young Lords. I mean, we everywhere. And so it's up to us to teach us the history. It's up to us to save us. Up to us to build us. That's where we're gonna win. It starts here. They don't want us to truly understand the power of collective energy. But we saw it once, right? We went viral that day, huh? That's why they keep us divided. And you know how it goes, divide and conquer. So our first step is to come together as people. Because we could be here screaming, we could be here knocking. Everybody know Ricky don't represent nobody. But you know the powers that be are gonna get the person that's gonna sell out. So we have to understand the history of what happened so we know what's happening today. So we have a better awareness of how we can come together as a community of people for the future. Change the narratives around our people. Last thing I want to say, we're here arguing for independence. You know, and the only reason why we're even talking state or freedom is because they don't think we can come together and do it ourselves. If they knew that we can hold ourselves down, this wouldn't be a conversation. They never seen us do it. So it's 2022, mi gente. We have to wake up to this. We have to look at ourselves. We have to come together, remove all the divisions that have been placed. Okay? And we gotta show up more together. Not just the Puerto Rican weekend, not just today. Let's come together and figure this out. Let's create that bridge between the bodies here and the body on the island and come up with real solutions in between us. Pa'lante, mi gente. Thank you. My name is Mark Ray.
Quiero aclarar que Estados Unidos no es América y que en este continente Los argentinos, los cubanos, los haitianos, todos somos americanos. Pero los gringos no son los únicos.
Now I'd like to call up Friends of Puerto Rico Initiative, Digna Sanchez. If she's here. Oh yeah, she is here. I see her
Engañados
coming.
llamando a Estados Unidos América. Sí. Bien, gracias. Gracias, sí. ¿Cómo estamos?
Help me welcome Digna Sanchez, please, y'all.
I'm so happy to be here today, and we just came from the UN, which in and of itself was an experience. It ended up really well, but there were some moments that were somewhat, not the best. But we walked out, all of us independentistas walked out when Ricky Rosselló and then his wife and others were going to speak. And I want you to know it's already been put in the papers in Puerto Rico that they walked out on Ricky Rosselló, so that's a good thing. My message is going to be very direct. This is the 50th anniversary of us coming to the UN since the first resolution in 1972. I was here and I spoke at that rally in 1972. I've been in this for 50 years. And this is what all of us need to understand. This is not an overnight struggle. This is going to take time. And we have to hang in there. Just as other countries, the Irish, 780 years to free themselves from the United Kingdom. Okay? But we're not looking to meet there. But my message to you today is, because I hear sometimes, especially young people say, oh, this is taking too long. We need to do this now. Well, you know what? We need to do it now and now and now, and until we do it, we have to keep doing the struggle. This is not something that we can say, no, I've developed a plan, and next year it's going to happen, and this is what we have to do. It doesn't work that way because we do not control the powers that be. But it's heartening to know that things are happening in Latin America. Let's celebrate the elections in Colombia, okay? A historic development in Colombia, in a country that was torn apart. And we know it's going to be difficult for them. They won the election with over 1 million votes, but it's not for them to now sit down and take it easy. Okay, so we all have to be aware that now another level of struggle begins for them in Colombia. And we understand that, and we have to apply it to ourselves and to the struggle for Puerto Rico. So when we say that we come before the UN and we feel that it's taking too long, you know what? We're in a planet that has a history of imperialism and repression, and we are the colony of a major imperialist power. Don't forget that. And so we can't feel that it's like, I remember la lucha en el colegio de Otto. En la lucha de Otto nadie se cansa, pues en esta lucha no nos podemos cansar, ¿ok? Hay que seguir, hay que buscar las fuerzas de uno donde las puede encontrar, pero hay que tener fuerza y tener la convicción de que lo vamos a lograr, porque si nos mantenemos unidos y con la convicción de que lo vamos a lograr, yo sé que lo vamos a lograr, ¿ok? Así es que mi mensaje es bien corto, pero es para cada uno de nosotros hacer ese compromiso de que sabemos que esto no es una cuestión de una semana, de un mes. Esto puede tardar años. Ya yo llevo 50 años en esto, más de 50. Pero escojo eso porque yo estuve aquí en el 72 Y hablé en esa ocasión y ahora 50 años después estoy hablando de nuevo. Y si yo pudiera vivir 50 años más y no tardara, lo hacía también, pero no creo que eso se va a dar. Pero hasta que yo pueda, aquí estaré presente y así espero de ustedes. Así es que viva Puerto Rico libre y espero que lo logremos juntos. Gracias. ¡Viva Puerto Rico libre!
That's right. This is a way of life, so that we don't get discouraged. This is a way of life. I come from hip-hop culture. Hip-hop is a way of life. This revolution is a way of life, and we cannot get tired. I want to call up to the stage our brother Haskins, Tariq Haskins from the Black Liberation Army.
Peace, family. I am for the total independence of Puerto Rico. I'm not for Commonwealth status. I'm not for statehood. I'm not for an association of Puerto Rico with the United States. Puerto Rico is a colony, so I am for the total independence of Puerto Rico. My name is Tyreek. I am a Black Panther. I am a former member of the Black Liberation Army. I spent 17 years in various American death camp prisons as a prisoner of war. I love you all for being here. Your being here says that you are intelligent, you call yourself intelligent, and you ask questions and you do the research to find the answers to those questions. I love you also because your being here says that you are courageous. You are here in spite of the risk of contracting, of getting COVID-19. Also, I love you because you are courageous, and your being here says that in spite of you knowing that the FBI and the CIA are very upset at all of us being here, nevertheless you are here. So I love you, and the freedom-loving people of the world, they love you for being here for the total independence of Puerto Rico. And more Puerto Rican people will openly show that they love you for being here, for standing for the total independence of Puerto Rico once they get that gun removed from their head. As you know, the gun was placed against the people of Puerto Rico's head in 1898. In 1898, Teddy Roosevelt and other ruling class persons said that they wanted America to be an empire, and in order to be an empire, they needed colonies. And when they looked out, they saw the people of Cuba and the Philippines fighting against Spain, and they said, if we can defeat Spain, we would have 3 colonies. We would have Puerto Rico, we would have Cuba, and we would have the Philippines. So that Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, he told the newspapers that began publishing stories, and the stories would say that Spain was brutalizing and murdering the people of Puerto Rico, the people of Cuba, and the people of the Philippines. And then he told, you should know that Teddy Roosevelt wasn't the president in 1898. He was not the president. He was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. But he was a rich person, and he had more power than the president. So he told the fleet, the American Navy, that was anchored off Hong Kong to be ready for his order to attack the Spanish fleet in the Philippines. And once he got these moves in place, he quit his job as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and he created the Rough Riders so that he could be in a war and prove that he was not a coward. And this is largely the reason why Puerto Rico is a colony. But America went on to defeat the Spanish, and when they defeated the Spanish, they had landed troops in Puerto Rico, and after the Spanish were defeated, they said that Puerto Rico is now a colony of the United States. And ever since then, the people of Puerto Rico have been having a gun to their head. And the gun is the colonial status. And as you know, the Americans had landed troops in Puerto Rico during the conflict. But they only had them there for a short time, long enough for them to create a neo-colonial apparatus. And once they created that neo-colonial apparatus, some people thought that the gun had been removed, but the gun had not been removed. The gun was then being taken up by Puerto Rican police. And so that Puerto Rican people have had the gun to their head ever since 1898. Now, once this colonial status was established, once the colonial status was established, then the American people were being told that the United States was really going to help the Puerto Rican people out, but that was not the case. They were only going to give the impression of helping out the Puerto Rican people. And so that the Puerto Rican people were being subjected to a neo-colonial situation. And the gun was being hidden, but the gun was there at the Puerto Rican people's head. And that's what was going on. So ever since 1898, Puerto Rico has been a colony of the United States. And I'm here to say that I am for the total independence of Puerto Rico. And that is the only way for the Puerto Rico people to exist. And once the Puerto Rican people are free and independent, then they can pursue a free and independent course. And they can pursue a free and independent course like the people of Cuba have pursued. And Puerto Rico is a poor country, but once they are independent, they can do like the Cuban people did and pool their resources and buy their colleges and hospitals and have free medical care and free transportation, all of these things. So the only course for the Puerto Rican people is independence, and that is what we are for. And as you know, I'm a former political prisoner. There are other political prisoners who are pro-independentistas like myself, Rap Brown, Mumia Abu Jamal, Mumia, Kamal Siddiqui. So we want to know that part of our effort to make Puerto Rico free, we want to continue to spend an effort to free our political prisoners. So I am for the total independence of Puerto Rico, and we want to free our political prisoners. And I want to end by saying power to the people. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. Thank you.
Power to the people. Power to the people. I would like to call up here our brother Eric Ramos from el Partido Independentista Puertorriqueño. Right here. Here you go, Eric. Let's go, my brother. Give it up for my brother Eric Ramos, please. Thank you.
Compañero y compañera, I'm gonna speak in Spanish, but first I want, on behalf of the Puerto Rican Independence Party, thanks all the people here of different struggles in the world, that we are together on that, because all of us independentistas are in the same struggles that you are. So I'm gonna speak in Spanish. Primeramente quiero decir que una vez más estamos aquí en este lugar cercano a las Naciones Unidas. Una vez más hay esta peregrinación anual a este lugar y sabemos que la importancia que tiene este proceso es uno de continuidad. Nuestro país está en una situación que cada año, igualmente hablando de continuidad, cada año está en peor situación. Nuestro pueblo está sufriendo en unos niveles extraordinarios y es una obligación de nosotros aquí, las organizaciones aquí en Nueva York y fuera de Puerto Rico, llevar ese mensaje a nuestros hermanos y hermanas aquí en Estados Unidos, que comprendan, los eduquemos, les enseñemos lo que somos, nuestra grandeza. Muchos hermanos y hermanas conocen eso, pero nosotros tenemos la obligación de comunicárselo continuamente e informarles de las barbaridades que el imperio de Estados Unidos está haciendo en Puerto Rico en el año 2022. Así las cosas, lo único importante es que estemos aquí unidos y que en cada lucha nuestra estemos presentes unos y los otros, porque juntos hacemos mucho más peso en lo que vamos a lograr eventualmente, que es la liberación. Quiero simplemente leer unas palabras del compañero Juan Dalmau, un corto mensaje. El compañero Juan Dalmau estuvo líder del Partido Independentista Puertorriqueño, estuvo dentro de las vistas y participó, pero lamentablemente su vuelo sale a las 6 de la tarde, por lo tanto ya él estará en el aeropuerto o se habrá ido. Así es que voy a leer estas cortas palabras del compañero Juan Dalmau. El pueblo de Puerto Rico tiene el derecho inalienable a la libre determinación e independencia, y los Estados Unidos la obligación de descargar su responsabilidad descolonizadora con respecto a Puerto Rico. Hasta el presente, luego de 124 años de convertirnos en una posesión en virtud de una conquista militar, Estados Unidos ha insistido en mantener a Puerto Rico, una nación latinoamericana y caribeña, en una condición de subordinación colectiva. Las toman unilateralmente las tres ramas del gobierno de Estados Unidos. Ello constituye una flagrante violación a los derechos humanos, civiles y políticos de nuestro pueblo, y por lo tanto debe ser tarea impostergable para ambos países ponerle fin al régimen. Para colmo de males, las consecuencias económicas y sociales del colonialismo han sido graves. El ingreso per cápita sigue siendo hoy, como hace 70 años, una tercera parte de los Estados Unidos y la mitad del estado más pobre. 40% de la población está bajo el nivel de pobreza. Tenemos la tasa de participación laboral más baja, por mucho, que cualquiera de los estados de Estados Unidos, y los peores índices de desigualdad social. Así nos quieren. El país lleva más de 15 años en contracción económica, prácticamente ininterrumpida. Una séptima parte de la población emigró en la última década, y el gobierno del territorio lleva 6 años bajo una sindicatura impuesta por una ley federal. Ante esas circunstancias, nuestro pueblo ha abierto los ojos y exige en las urnas y en la calle un cambio verdadero. Estamos en nuevos tiempos. En ese proceso, la diáspora es un elemento importante para nuestra descolonización e independencia, y hoy, con la esperanza y optimismo, reafirmamos nuestra voluntad de que una patria nueva es posible. Adelante y que viva Puerto Rico libre. Muchas gracias, compañeros y compañeras. Y una vez más, que viva Puerto Rico libre.
Gracias, Eric. Despite the numbers, there's still a lot of great organizations here today. So when you get an opportunity to build and connect, please do so. And also elfrente.org. If you want to find out more information, that's an alliance of various organizations fighting for the independence of Puerto Rico. I would like to bring up, from Jericho, New York, Jorge Chang.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Libertad and the other organizers for this event and for inviting us. My name is Jorge Chang. I am representing National Jericho Movement and the New York City chapter of the Jericho Movement. Thank you. So for those who are not familiar with our work, we are out here educating, supporting political prisoners and their families, and fighting for their freedom wherever we can. That includes providing commissary funds, bringing food packages, providing medical, legal, and parole support, fundraising campaigns for assisting and releasing, with the release of our PPs. So a lot of the political prisoners that we support are from activist organizations such as the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, AIM, Chicano Movement, Animal and Earth Liberation Movements, Border Protectors, obviously the Puerto Rican Independence Movement, all under attack of the FBI COINTELPRO program, their surveillance and entrapment. So despite our victories over the last number of years, including releases for Herman Bell, Jalil Muntaqim, David Gilbert, the MOVE organization, Jan Laman, Russell Maroon Schultz, Oscar Rivera Lopez, and most recently Sundiata Kohli. We've also, over the years, lost many ancestors who've transitioned, including Safia Bukhari, Abdul Majid, Albert Noah Washington, Mondo Ilanga, Bashir Hamid, Lynn Stewart, and others. So we're here to remind everyone that there are still political prisoners in prison that need our support, and there's still a lot of work to be done. These are elderly political prisoners who've been incarcerated for the last 40 to 50 years, held beyond their sentences, denied parole and compassionate release, languishing from medical neglect. So we are saying enough is enough. We need your help to free our political prisoners. We need to bring them home. This includes Mumia Abu Jamal, Mutulu Shakur, also Blanco, Ed Poindexter, Afia Siddiqui, Ana Belen Montes, Leonard Peltier, and so just as one of the founders of Jericho says, Jalil Muntaqim says, we are our own liberators. So the time is now. We usually say, what's the call? Free them all. So for more information about the work that New York City Jericho does, as well as the National Jericho Movement does, please visit jerichonewyork.org, as well as the jerichomovement.com to support the work that we do, freeing our political prisoners, our freedom fighters. Free the land, free them all. Thank you.
I now bring up from Pro Libertad, Ben Ramos.
When I say the name of one of our two sisters that are behind the walls, you're gonna say presente, but you're gonna say one of those presentes that they can hear you wherever they are. So when I say Ana Belén Montes, you will say presente. When I say Nina Dros Franco, you will say presente. Ana Belén Montes, presente. Ana Belén Montes, presente. Nina Dros Franco, presente. Nina Dros Franco, presente. Political prisoners are freed when we unite.
Right on.
La unidad is what creates the victories, and we Boricuas, we have made a lot of freedom happen. But it's not just because of unity, it is action. It is not enough to say presente. What you have to do is to go out there and to get active. We need unity in action. Mi gente, Pro Libertad, call to action on Puerto Rico, New York Boricua Resistance, Philly Boricuas, Se Acabaron las Promesas, Movimiento Nin Negrón, Frente Socialista, various organizations have come together to form the Puerto Rico No Se Vende campaign. We are going against Promesa. We're going to dismantle La Junta. We're going to free Puerto Rico. I need everyone to get on Instagram and find PR Not For Sale. Just don't follow us. Do something with us. Tenemos comité activo. We are uniting to build a campaign where our unity and our diversity plus our action, it is about action, will create the Puerto Rico that we need. And just so that it gets said, as a proud queer Boricua, happy Pride. We are in Pride Month. Happy Pride. Of Puerto Rico, that right now where queer people and trans people are being killed and attacked every day, we are going to create a Puerto Rico where queer and trans people feel at home, where queer and trans people feel safe. That cannot be erased. All right, so we are building a Puerto Rico for all. for todos nosotros. And if that's a problem, leave and don't come back. Que viva Puerto Rico libre.
Powerful, powerful. Now bring up a brother from La Fuerza Revolucionaria Dominicana. Bring up Radames Morales.
Buenas tardes, compañeros y compañeras. Good afternoon.
Buenas tardes, señor.
I'm representing Fuerza de la Revolución. Estoy representando a Fuerza de la Revolución y parte de la comunidad dominicana. Y le traigo mensajes directamente de nuestra dirección nacional en la República Dominicana. Pero me voy a tomar la libertad de también representar a un compañero que tenemos luchando por la independencia de Puerto Rico, por la liberación en América Latina y diríamos en el mundo, y que muchos de ustedes conocen. Él no puede estar aquí porque está enfermo, pero está representado. El compañero es Frank Vergara. El mensaje es el siguiente: contra el colonialismo y el neocolonialismo, por la independencia de Puerto Rico. En la parte continental que va de Río Bravo hasta la Patagonia, a lo que José Martí llamaba nuestras Américas, hoy conocida como América Latina y el Caribe, la pandemia ha impactado con más de 50 millones de casos de COVID y sus variantes. Y la situación política ha estado oscilando entre las dominantes políticas imperiales que consideran a nuestros países independientes y empobrecidos como patio trasero del norte revuelto y brutal que nos desprecia. Y la lucha por la autodeterminación e independencia de nuestros pueblos de América. En esta circunstancia, la fuerza de la revolución propugna por la construcción de un nuevo equitativo orden económico internacional, multipolar, solidario, anticolonial, antiimperialista, donde impera la democracia participativa de la soberanía nacional, la paz, la justicia social y la igualdad entre seres humanos y naciones que componen el planeta. En esta alternativa, los ciudadanos y ciudadanas han de ocupar por derecho un lugar prioritario fuera de estado de enajenación, de manipulación de los recursos mediáticos, de tratamiento mecánico, moldeamientos, control y dirección antojadiza por parte de los que están en el poder capitalista. Deben ser ciudadanos y ciudadanos con auténtica participación política, dinámica, creativa, constructiva y depositaria de forma de gobierno democrático participativo, negadora de la globalización originaria en los intereses del mercado mundial. Además, la fuerza de revolución reclama el cese de los conflictos bélicos que las naciones poderosas imponen a las más débiles, así como el derecho a la autodeterminación de los pueblos o países. La práctica de la violencia como medio de expansión de la influencia territorial, apropiación de riqueza y dirimir diferencia deben cesar. Es necesario unir luchando para eliminar la vieja y ilegal práctica de los Estados Unidos y la grande potencia de que los hechos se imponen al derecho. Reclamamos el imperio de la ley y la justicia, así como la solución a los conflictos internacionales por la vía pacífica y procedimientos judiciales establecidos. En este contexto, la descolonización de Puerto Rico y otras naciones y la paz mundial siguen siendo un objetivo por alcanzar, y tras él no deben escatimarse ningún tipo de esfuerzo. Fuerza de la Revolución sostiene que debe cesar el bloqueo y el hostigamiento, la persecución y agresión que Estados Unidos mantiene contra diversos pueblos del planeta. Medio Oriente, Asia Central, Siria, Corea, Palestina, América Latina y el Caribe, donde el imperialismo desarrolla una ofensiva contra los gobiernos progresistas que han echado a andar unas relaciones independientes y respecto a la política que se elaboran en diferentes órdenes. Reconocemos que América Latina y el Caribe es un territorio en disputa y frente al desarrollo actual de una cuestionable política contrainsurgencia. Nos colocamos al lado de la defensa de los procesos liberadores de Cuba socialista, Venezuela, Bolivia chavista, la Nicaragua sandinista, Bolivia, Ecuador, la independencia de Puerto Rico, el imperio de la derrota en Haití y el reciente triunfo en Colombia. Fuerza de la Revolución se opone y combate la política intervencionista de expansión territorial de un país sobre otro, en toda su modalidad, y en especial a la instalación permanente y permanencia de bases y experimentos militares por parte de los Estados Unidos y de las grandes potencias que constituyen una amenaza permanente para la paz en los estados nacionales víctimas del régimen de agresión. Valoramos como positivo que el pueblo puertorriqueño demuestra de gran valor por su identidad cultural y tradiciones, lo que nos llena de satisfacción como caribeños y latinoamericanos. Valoramos como positivo también porque el heroico y solidario papel desempeñado por Puerto Rico a favor de la causa independentista y los valores de sus guerreros y guerreras por la noble causa de la independencia a costa de la posible tortura, encarcelamiento, asesinato, nos difunde en el ideal de que nuestra gran América lleva dentro de su sangre principios a todo el Caribe latinoamericano. En esta fecha heroica reiteramos que nuestra adhesión a sus derechos y lucha, así como la disposición de repetir la historia de Hostos, Betances y Lorita, también de nuestros mártires y nuestra heroína de América. Alzamos nuestros puños solidarios por Borinquen y nos elevamos con el grito del Ares por Betances hasta que cesen de pisar a Puerto Rico la bota del yanqui invasor. Fuera yanqui de Borinquen, independencia para Puerto Rico ahora. Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. Gracias.
Gracias. That's another part of our history that a lot of people don't know, is the connection between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, and that's something that we need to research so that we don't do what they want us to do, which is to divide and conquer, and allowing them to divide us. Throughout our history, Dominican Republic was very instrumental and supportive of our brothers and sisters that were fighting for independence in part of El Grito de Lares. Right now, I'd like to bring up from Cuba C, Jason Corley.
Cuba sí bloqueo no. Cuba sí bloqueo no. 2 weeks ago or rather last week at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, one particular chant that kind of stood out that I think represents what we're commemorating today. Puerto Rico y Cuba somos sola una. Puerto Rico y Cuba somos sola una. The idea that Puerto Rico and Cuba, two wings of the same bird, one struggle. That has been the case since 1868. That got a resurgence in the early 70s when Cuba, under the leadership of Fidel Castro, became the leading voice, which it continues to be to this day, the leading international voice in defending the right for Puerto Rican self-determination. Cuba is a big reason as to why these decolonization committee meetings continue to happen and the demand to bring this to the General Assembly. The Cuba C Coalition, New York, New Jersey, is made up of various Cuba solidarity groups, individuals, organizations that support ending the U.S. embargo, ending the illegal U.S. embargo that continues to this day, return of Guantanamo, the part of Guantanamo that the U.S. Navy illegally occupies, ending all travel restrictions, and ending all subversive activities, including paying a few rappers several $100,000 to say scurrilous things about the government. These and other more serious activities have always been directed against Cuba. one thing in particular that Cuba C does as far as organizing, helping to organize and support trips to Cuba is encouraging people to go see Cuba for themselves, whether it was the recent May Day Brigade, the up-and-coming IFCO Pastors for Peace Caravan, the Venceremos Brigade trip, as well as a trip being organized by the African Awareness Association sometime in July. We may hear more about that in a few minutes. These are opportunities for people to see Cuba for themselves, and we invite people to join the coalition to assist in these campaigns, helping people go to Cuba. Joining the monthly caravans, the monthly rallies and caravans in different cities throughout the United States, including here in the United States, to demand an end to the embargo. The next caravan is going to be in Jackson Heights, Queens. It won't be as much of a caravan as much as a rally and march, but nevertheless, June 25th at 1 o'clock in Jackson Heights, Queens at Diversity Plaza. Take the E or the F train to 74th Street, 74th and 37th Road. We will be there to demand that the U.S. end its embargo against Cuba. These monthly caravans are particularly important. They got a start about a year and a half ago under the leadership of Cuban-American Carlos Lasso. That is, in recent years, the rounds of caravans have been led by Cuban Americans demanding that the embargo end. Please join us this Saturday. Some of you may already have this flyer already. More will be given out. Once again, Cuba, Puerto Rico, two birds, two wings of the same bird, independence for Puerto Rico. Now, thank you.
And now, once again, Dr. Drum.
Thank you. Huepa, Ariel, ¿dónde está Ariel? Mi amigo, Tita Luis Perez, por favor. Beautiful, thank you. So this next piece is about us. I want to first, I think that there's a beautiful disruption going on today. First is us being here on this piece of land, right, that was taken away from its original people, yeah, but here we are, rising with our voices. That's a disruption to the system of things. The second disruption, I think, is among our own selves. I don't think many of us believe we can get together and be one, right? That's an issue, that's a real issue, but here we are. We are all many organizations here. We're coming from different places, and we are here uniting as one voice. So that's beautiful. That's a beautiful disruption, right? Thank you. And then this next piece, Pa'lante con su machete. You know, so in this piece, it's an acronym for, you know, when we talk about Pa'lante con su machete, is to understand that, you know, this struggle for freedom, it ain't gonna happen without a fight. Right on. It ain't gonna happen if you ain't ready to die for it. That's a fact. That's a fact, right? That's what the machete means. It's very symbolic. But is it real? Right? That depends on you. Right? Pa'lante con su machete. Despierta, Boricua. Orgullo puertorriqueño. Y hoy, tú no te quedas atrás. And we're going to do that again with, you know, one of the most important things when we talked about, you know, how we got together, how Bomba comes, and then right after the drum, I would say that was when the first Boricua was born. And I want to say thank you to Captain Bori, because he said something that I think that would be interesting, that we can all start doing, making a change, you know, to create that union, that one word, that one mindset that represents who we are. So removing the C from Boricua and just making sure that you're putting a Q, the Q there, right? And why? Because even today, I think something he said that it really did hit me, you know, it's true, that you could take that C and you can use that word to say colonial, right? And so we're gonna be intentional. We wanna remove the C from Boricua and we wanna put the Q in there, because it's important to understand that, because, you know, Rosello is Puerto Rican, but he's not a Boricua. Let's make it clear, right? Rosello is a Puerto Rican, but he is not a Boricua. Right? That's the difference of us understanding that the Boricuas want their independence. There are other Puerto Ricans that are looking for statehood. That's not what this is about. We're not looking for that. We want our independence, so we got to keep it real, and we have to know who they are and know who we are. And we somos Boricuas. Adelante, mi gente. Adelante con tu machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Adelante con tu machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Ay, tú no te quedas atrás. Pa'lante con su machete, despierta Boricua. Pa'lante con su machete, despierta Boricua. Orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Ay, hoy con mi bomba, ay, yo voy a cantar a mi gente boriqueña, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Pa'lante con su machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Ay, con mi baile, ay, con mi guay, maracá, ay, pa'lante con tu machete, despierta Boricua. Pa'lante con su machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, tú no te quedas atrás. Pa'lante con tu machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Pa'lante con su machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás. Pa'lante con su machete, despierta Boricua, orgullo puertorriqueño, y hoy tú no te quedas atrás.
Gracias. También se escapó ahí ese Bombalú. Bombalú. Thank you, my brother. Y ahora Ana López. ¿Dónde está? La profesora Ana López. Give it up for Ana López, por favor.
Buenas tardes otra vez. Ahora me toca a mí ser maestra de ceremonia. Now it's my turn to do master of ceremony. So I'm very strict because we do have time limits. So if I have a person come up, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder to let you know that your time is almost up. I was trying to do it, but people were not following that rule. So I try to be very diplomatic in this process, right? So estaba diciendo que cuando venga para hablar, algunas veces cuando uno está aquí adelante, pues se le va el tiempo y hay mucha gente que quieren dar su mensaje de solidaridad, y todos somos importantes, todos somos más y todos somos importantes en esta lucha. Así que si le doy un toquecito en el hombro, quiere decir que se ha ido sobre el tiempo y más o menos concluya lo que vaya a decir. So if I tap your shoulder, conclude what you're going to say, and we go on to the next persons. I want to invite we're already running a little late, so I want to go a little further and invite a very special person that is here with us from Palestine. She's here to give us a very particular message because the life and struggle of the Palestinian people is the same as our struggle to retain our sovereignty. And so with us we have Dr. Rabab Abdul Hadi, who's going to be speaking. Tenemos con nosotros una compañera de Palestina. La lucha de los palestinos es igual que la lucha de nosotros por la descolonización.
Gracias. I'm sorry I'm going to be...
Viva, viva Palestina!
Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Puerto Rico! Viva Puerto Rico libre! Que viva! Sisters and brothers, I apologize because I'm going to be speaking in English. I would like to speak in Arabic, but that's difficult today. First, I want to stand by acknowledging the Lenape people, the indigenous people on whose land we stand today. The same way we acknowledge the indigenous Puerto Rican people and the same way we acknowledge the Palestinian people if you were in Palestine. Secondly, I want to recognize the fallen among us, from the children in Texas to the victims of white supremacy in Buffalo, to the George Floyd who was killed 2 years ago, to Breonna Taylor, to every single person who fell in the struggle for freedom. And they are too many, unfortunately they are too many to recount every single name. I want to also mention that today, next month actually, is going to be the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Palestinian poet, writer and author Ghassan Kanafani. Ghassan Kanafani was assassinated by the Israeli Mossad, the Israeli intelligence, in a very similar manner in which our leadership has been targeted, from Don Alpizo Campos, who was poisoned by the United States government in prison, to Filiberto Ojeda, who was also assassinated, to people who was assassinated by the COINTELPRO program, whether we're talking of the Black Panther Party, American Indian movement, the Puerto Rican movement, the Chicano movement, and anybody who opposes US imperialism, colonialism, and colonization of our lands. This is very similar, and I think it's really important for us to keep. Why is this the case? Why do they do that? Because they want to deprive the movement of its leadership, because they are afraid of these movements. And it's very important for us to think about that, how they are imprisoned, how they spy, how they criminalize, how they are trying to punish everybody when they feel that the movement is a threat. The more the movement is a threat to them, and the more we come around the world together, the more the bullies get bullier, and the more they are attacked. So the bad news is that we are in for bad times, but we are in to win. Palestine and Puerto Rico, as well as many people around the world, experienced settler colonialism. Puerto Rico, 1898. But before that, let's not forget 1492, when somebody got lost and colonized the western part of the world and claimed that they actually brought civilization to quote-unquote the savages. The story is very similar in Palestine with the Zionist settler colonial project that sought to erase people from their land, erase us from our culture, the same way in which they tried to erase the Puerto Rican culture and silence Spanish and basically erase people, the Taino people, the Arawak people from the islands, and say that you can't even have drums. Today at the United Nations, we were told that it is not polite to applaud or chant "Give up Puerto Rico Libre" when people were speaking. And it was very interesting because I was wondering, where are the drums that will be calling on people and people will be responding? And they are right here, the drums of freedom, the drums of resistance, the drums of the culture of the people. I have a couple of more points to say, and I know I want to stick to the 5 points that the 5 minutes that you gave me. We also share unrestrained greed and colonialism that's trying to take over our land. We know what's happening in Puerto Rico is one of the people I know, my partner, calls it the Hawaiiization of the Puerto Rican island, in which more and more people come to either buy land, take over land, settle in the land to replace the indigenous population. And we know that this is something that has happened by somebody who actually was so audacious to try to come and speak today at the United Nations. He wasn't even a governor. He was removed by the people in 2019 because of his corruption, because of his lies, because of his sexism, because of his homophobia, because of his collusion with the United States, because of his collusion in Promesa. And then he actually has audacity to come and speak at a committee on the 50th anniversary of the decolonization of Puerto Rico. If you are not interested in the decolonization of Puerto Rico, what did you come there to say? Why were you even there? Why did you even dare to come? And what really happened today is that in a spirit of resistance, people denormalized oppression. Folks walked out when he was speaking to say no. He doesn't represent anybody. He probably doesn't even represent himself. But he has audacity, has no shame. So people walked out to say no to the committee at the United Nations. Do not listen to him. Do not listen to him, because also, by the way, for us to be clear, he's not speaking for himself. He's speaking for the United States government. The United States was not sitting in its seat, but it was represented by the people we know who are internally colonized, who are more likely to collaborate with the people who are oppressing us than with our own people. So today, folks said, no, we're not going to normalize with that. And this was really, really important. The last thing I want to speak about is the solidarity among our people. And I want to mention that some of you may have heard it before, but I want to bring very heartwarm greetings from everybody in Palestine who supports resistance. Everybody in Palestine who supports resistance and decolonization. Our brother Oscar Lopez Rivera has not come in here, but one of the first things he's done when he was freed, not released, freed from prison due to the movement struggle. Just let's not forget that. It wasn't because the United States up and decided to be humane. It was because people struggled to free Oscar Lopez Rivera, and many of you are here, and many of his comrades, and we are continuing to struggle for Leonard Peltier, for Mumia Abu Jamal, for the thousands and thousands of people who are in prison here in Palestine, throughout the world, in Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil, in India, everywhere around the world. We continue to do that. Oscar Lopez Rivera, one of the first actions he did is he went to Chicago and he hugged the freed Palestinian prisoner Rasmiya Odeh, who was going to be deported, showed true solidarity. Oscar Lopez Rivera and the Puerto Rican movement in the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and if you remember, a few years ago, Bogoya and all the new corporations refused to sponsor the Puerto Rican Day Parade because it was honoring Oscar. And the people, the Puerto Ricans, asked us to march right behind the indigenous people, the Palestinians, and we did not impose ourselves. We waited for our comrades, sisters, and brothers to say, come. This is your place, and we stood where we are. I want to also honor the students at the University of Puerto Rico who protested when Israel was bombing Gaza by putting up the Palestinian flag on top of the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras. I want to honor the Puerto Rican women, many of whom participated in the ouster of Roseo, that actually stood at the National Women's Studies Association, held the Palestinian flag and said, you should support Palestine the same way you support Puerto Rico. You are here meeting in Puerto Rico on our land. I want to also finally honor the Puerto Ricans and every single people here in the movement who in 1982, 40 years ago, when Israel was invading Lebanon, stood by us and refused to abandon the Palestinians. A week later, 1 million people marched in Central Park for nuclear disarmament, and Palestinians and Lebanese were not allowed to speak up. But you were there. You were there for us. You stood for us because you, as we are, believe in the indivisibility of justice. We believe that we come together for our resistance, for our liberation. When people are free, everybody else is free. So I will end by saying, que viva Puerto Rico libre! Viva Puerto Rico libre! And one thing else I learned in the demonstration, viva Puerto Rico libre, fuera Yankee del Caribe! Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker, nuestro próximo la persona que va a hablar es Vanessa Ramos de la Asociación Americana de Juristas. Ella va a dar un reporte de lo que se dio, un resumen del reporte que se dio en las Naciones Unidas. Vanessa Ramos from the American Association of American Jurists is going to give you a brief report of what happened at the United Nations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana, and thank you, everyone. Que viva la solidaridad Puerto Rico-Palestina. Long live the solidarity of Puerto Rico and Palestine. And honestly, it's very hard to follow after Rabab spoke. Yes. So my role here is to give you a report of what happened at the UN and the resolution. I'm going to summarize that resolution and the important points that it presented today. And I'm going to do it in English and Spanish for the benefit of all of our audience. The first point is that the resolution was sponsored by Cuba, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Russian Federation, Syria, Venezuela, and Antigua Barbuda. Cuba, our great Cuba, and Stop That Blockade Now, presented the resolution on the question of Puerto Rico. The content of the resolution in summary was as follows, and the most important thing in this resolution is that the case of Puerto Rico is going to be kept under continuous review by the Special Committee on Decolonization. Without that sentence, our case will go out of the UN. We have to have that sentence in our resolutions. It also reaffirms the right of the people of Puerto Rico to self-determination and independence in conformity with Resolution 1514-15 of the General Assembly. That is the decolonization resolution, nothing else. We have the inalienable right to self-determination and independence, and this has been affirmed by the Special Committee on Decolonization for 50 years. Also, it recognizes that the people of Puerto Rico are a Latin American and Caribbean nation that has its own distinct national identity. The resolution this year calls upon the United States government to promote a process that will enable the people of Puerto Rico to exercise its right of self-determination and independence in conformity with Resolution 1514-15 and the decisions of the Special Committee on Decolonization regarding Puerto Rico. This is not about congressional resolutions or anything. This is about international law. In addition, it calls upon the United States government to take the necessary steps to address the socio-economic needs of Puerto Rico, which have been aggravated by COVID, hurricanes Irma and Maria, and earthquakes. It also notes with concern that the decision to impose PROMESA has exacerbated the subordination of Puerto Rico to the US Congress. And it also calls for the return of all land of Vieques and Ceiba, and that the United States assumes its responsibility of cleaning and decontaminating all lands. It expressed concern over actions against supporters of independence and calls for investigation as to those persecutions. This is really very, very important. And it requests the General Assembly to consider the question of Puerto Rico in all of its aspects. So therefore, our next struggle is we have to place that case of Puerto Rico before the General Assembly that is composed of 194 countries. Now, statements were made in support of the resolution by Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Venezuela. Argentina spoke on behalf of CELAC, la Comisión de Estados Latinoamericanos y del Caribe, and Azerbaijan spoke on behalf of the non-aligned movement. So therefore, we had a worldwide support. Y ahora la versión en español. La resolución de Naciones Unidas en el día de hoy fue coauspiciada por Cuba, Bolivia, Nicaragua, la Federación Rusa, Siria, Venezuela y Antigua Barbuda. Cuba fue quien presentó la resolución Viva Cuba, abajo el bloqueo. Contenido de la resolución. Lo más importante, que el Comité Especial de Descolonización se comprometió a mantener el caso de Puerto Rico bajo examen continuo. Sin esta oración, nuestro caso no continuaría. Segundo, reafirma el derecho inalienable del pueblo puertorriqueño a su libre determinación e independencia de conformidad con la resolución 151415 de la Asamblea General. Que el pueblo de Puerto Rico constituye una nación latinoamericana y caribeña con su propia identidad nacional. Llama al gobierno de los Estados Unidos a propiciar un proceso que permita al pueblo de Puerto Rico a ejercer su derecho a la libre determinación e independencia de conformidad con la resolución 151415 y todas las resoluciones del Comité Especial de Descolonización. En otras palabras, aquí no se está hablando del Congreso Imperial ni nada de eso, aquí está hablando del derecho internacional. También exhorta al gobierno de los Estados Unidos a atender las necesidades socioeconómicas del pueblo de Puerto Rico que se han agravado con COVID, los huracanes Irma y María y los terremotos. También toma nota con preocupación de la decisión de los Estados Unidos de imponer promesa y una junta de control fiscal que incrementa la subordinación de Puerto Rico a las políticas de los Estados Unidos. También solicita la devolución de las tierras de Vieques y Ceiba y que Estados Unidos se comprometa a limpiar y descontaminar estas tierras. Expresa preocupación por la persecución contra quienes apoyamos la independencia de Puerto Rico y llamó a una investigación. Y por último, solicita a la Asamblea General a considerar el caso de Puerto Rico en todos sus aspectos. Y nuestra próxima lucha es que este caso, el caso colonial de Puerto Rico, se eleve a la Asamblea General que se compone de 194 países. Hubo intervenciones en apoyo a la resolución de Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Venezuela, que son miembros del Comité Especial de Descolonización, y en adición Argentina habló a nombre de la CELAC y Azerbaiyán habló a nombre del movimiento No Alineados. Así este es el informe de hoy, pero esto no termina hoy. Vamos a seguir luchando. This is my report for today, but this does not end here today. We have to continue struggling so that next year, we are there at the UN on a stronger position and being able to, to try to elevate our case to all the fears that the United States is composed. It can be the General Assembly, it can be the UN Commission of Human Rights, it can be the Special Rapporteurs on Human Rights, it can be many, many, many instances. Y los exhorto a que nos ayuden y que sigamos adelante todos y todas juntas. En solidaridad, Puerto Rico, Palestina, Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Venezuela, Colombia. En solidaridad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Vanessa, por ese reporte tan nutrido, ¿verdad? De mucha información. We want to thank Vanessa for such a detailed report on the decolonization resolution that was rendered today. Now, to follow up with our program, we want the Partido Nacionalista de Puerto Rico, that is going to be a short message from Richard Lopez Rodriguez. The Nationalist Party celebrates this year 100 years of its composition and 100 years of struggle. So with that, Richie.
Thank you very much. I want all of you to give yourselves a round of applause for coming out here for the Puerto Rican people and supporting its sovereignty and its independence. And there's just mad love here. Mad love not only for the Puerto Rican people, but for humanity and its existence with dignity. And like my aunt said, we're here celebrating the 100 years of the Partido Nacionalista de Puerto Rico, which has 100 years of large struggle, and its only motive has been to rescue the sovereignty of Puerto Rico and the no collaboration with the US imperialism. And no collaboration for us means many things, like no voting, no going to the army, and doing many things that will bring collateral damage to the empire in every corner. I want to thank today to the youth for coming out and making it an issue, because most of these youth that you see here, they New Yorican born. I don't like using the terminology New Yorican, but they already made it a social word, so let's use it. Why not? And these people, they might have lost their link to Puerto Rico probably 60 or 80 years ago, but still the pride and what the Nationalist Party always wanted for the Puerto Rican people to do was to hold that pride and be resistance and persistence unto the recognition of the sovereignty and the independence of Puerto Rico. And that's what we're seeing here today with all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause, porque mientras existe un boricua en la tierra, Puerto Rico va a ser libre, soberano e independiente. Thank you.
So our struggle for independence here in the United States, it was very interesting that the speakers of the Rosselló contingent, yo le llamo los lacayos de Rosselló, one of the things that they could criticize in their statement was, they said the diaspora, the Puerto Rican diaspora, they won the independence of Puerto Rico and they were criticizing us. And I said, well, you just don't get it, right? They don't get it. Of course we want our independence because when we live here in the United States, we suffer, we understand what it is to be within the belly of the beast. We understand what colonialism is in its raw form. So that's why our identity is sharpened when we're here in the United States, and our struggle for independence is even stronger because we know what colonialism and statehood is all about. We live it every day. And it ain't easy, and it ain't what we want for our people. So with that said, we want to bring, we have some groups of people that come from different parts of the United States. We call it the resistance of the diaspora throughout the states. And so we have Maria Isa. She is from Minnesota. Los puertorriqueños de Minnesota, presente.
¿Qué es lo que hay? ¡Boricua! Epa, my name is Maria Isa. I'm a Boricua. I'm not New Yorican, I'm Soda Rican. But they say, why you care so much about Puerto Rico? Well, you got a heart and blood, right? My heart and blood is Boricua. And I care about my grandparents. And I care about my parents. And I care about the Boricua blood that runs through my daughter. And I care about the drums of our ancestors. And we here to decolonize Puerto Rico, not just for the future of our children in Borinquen. That we're relying not on a government to save them, but on our people throughout the diaspora and the people in connection of wanting liberation for Puerto Rico to be able to survive in crisis. That crisis wasn't just in Huracán Maria. That crisis was on forgetting about the men and women that were drafted to war out of Puerto Rico to fight wars when we have a war of just injustices for over 121 years, no, 528 years we've been colonized. We need to say, Puerto Rico libre. Puerto Rico libre. Puerto Rico libre. Puerto Rico libre. Con la bandera de tres colores y una estrella. Ay, Borinquen, tú eres la más bella. Borinquen, tú eres la más bella. Sonido del coquí y el sonido de mi tambor. Ay, Puerto Rico, tú eres mi gran amor. Ay, Puerto Rico, tú tienes mi corazón. Ay, sabrosa, can you say that? Sabrosa, sabrosa, sabrosa. Ay, sabrosa, es mi bomba y la bomba es mi cultura. Sabrosa, es mi bomba y la bomba es mi cultura. Boricua hasta la muerte, coming really fuerte. Like Ibaritos gun sugar canes with machetes. They say put the guns away, put the cuetes. And we just want the agua, electricidad. Tell them how to run it all in solar power. But you ain't hearing that from Tesla now. You be hearing it from the banderas in the sky, from NY to the shy. way to Orlando. This is Minnesota, R.I.P. Orlando. All the way to Big Floyd. Como duele, we let them hear the noise. Let them hear the noise, they bringing out the boys. They bringing out the toys. We here to make noise with Cuero from the drum. Pouring shots of liquor on the run for per pump to the boogie down in Bronx. BX, we ain't here to flex, we here to test. No, we here to confess to say, queremos libertad. Queremos libertad. Que queremos la libertad. Y cuidado que te quema lo que tengo candela. Cuidado que te quema lo que tengo candela. Cuidado no te quema lo que traigo es candela. Con esa bandera bella, con esa bandera bella, con esa bandera bella, con una estrellita. Hey. La oreña, dile conde que suba, dile conde que suba por la ventana. Ya la oreña, dile conde que suba, dile conde que suba. Ay, con su trino blanco y su pañuelo atrás. Ay, dile conde que suba por la ventana. Ya la oreña, dile conde que suba, dile conde que suba por la ventana. Qué bonita bandera, qué bonita bandera, qué bonita bandera, la bandera puertorriqueña, eso. Y más bonita se viera, que más bonita se viera si los yanquis no lo tuvieran. ¡Epa! ¡Coro! Qué bonita bandera, la bandera puertorriqueña, la bandera puertorriqueña, la bandera puertorriqueña, eso. La bomba. Hey, rest in peace to all the lives that we lost in Huracán Maria. The lives of all the trans people in Puerto Rico that have been killed and are disappeared. For the children who just wanted to have water and a roof over their heads and passed away because this government ignored them. We gotta do better, y'all. We need to make this movement just for one day out of the UN. It has to be every day. Do what you can every day. Praise the ancestors. Ache, pa'lante.
Un aplauso grande para María Isa. Ella está haciendo un trabajo increíble allá en Minnesota, representing the Puerto Rican people in Minnesota. Okay. Thank you so much, Maria Isa. She really brought out the spirit in all of us. And now we're going to continue that spirit because we also have a homegirl here in New York that does incredible poetry. We like to bring with her, she has brought two other poets, Albadelia and Destiny Padilla. So, Mariposa. Everybody knows Mariposa, right? From the Bronx. Esta es Mariposa, nuestra poeta nacional aquí de Nueva York, nacida y criada en Nueva York, pero con un corazón grande para Puerto Rico. Gracias, Ana. ¡Boricua! Es un honor, como siempre, to be here, and this is by request. So people, hola, ¿cómo está? I love just seeing all the beautiful faces of my beautiful people. When I look into your eyes, yo veo la libertad. Yo veo, yo camino, yo sueño y yo duermo la libertad. Mira mi cara puertorriqueña, a mi pelo vivo, a mis manos morenas. Mira mi corazón que se llena de orgullo y dime que no soy boricua. Can I get some drums too, Dr. Drum? Yeah! Give it up for Dr. Drum. Did you talk about the maraca? La maraca. You did. Okay.
We can take a moment to breathe, right? A respirar la libertad. Mira mi cara puertorriqueña, a mi pelo vivo, a mis manos morenas. Mira mi corazón que se llena de orgullo y dime que no soy boricua. Some people say that I'm not the real thing, boricua that is, 'cause I wasn't born on the enchanted island, 'cause I was born on the mainland north of Spanish Harlem, 'cause I was born in the Bronx. Some people think that I'm not bona fide, 'cause my playground was a concrete jungle, 'cause my Rio Grande de Loíza was the Bronx River, 'cause my Fajardo was City Island, my Luquillo Orchard Beach, and summer nights were filled with city noises instead of coquis. And Puerto Rico was just some paradise that we only saw in pictures. What does it mean to live in between? What does it take to realize that being Boricua is a state of mind, a state of heart, a state of soul? Mira mi cara puertorriqueña, a mi pelo vivo, a mis manos morenas. Mira mi corazón que se llena de orgullo y dime que no soy boricua. No nací en Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico nació en mí. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Give it up for Dr. Drum. And I'm gonna call up another amazing poet from Bushwick. Give it up for Alba Delia Hernandez.
Thank you, it's beautiful to be here. The energy in here is just, I don't know, it just feels good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mari, for inviting me. I'm going to begin with a quote from Albizu Campos in Spanish, and then when I get to the English, that's my piece. Y aquí, los Yankees llevan 52 años de guerra y guerra contra la nación de Puerto Rico y jamás han adquirido un derecho en Puerto Rico, ni existe un gobierno legal en Puerto Rico y eso es incontestable. Point game. I've been giving Puerto Rican history lessons for free to whoever will listen. I got my kids' attention, especially the part where the US government killed 19 innocent people, including children, including Jorgina Maldonado, a 7-year-old little girl shot in the back. Women in floral dresses, men in sunlit white clothes, massacred on a Palm Sunday in Ponce, 1937. And when my kids ask me, I tell my kids that Albizu was our Malcolm X. And when my kids ask me, who is Malcolm X? I tell them that if somebody hits you, you hit them back. You never stay hit. You heard? You never stay hit. Thank you.
Gracias. Give it up for Alba Delia Hernandez. Y la próxima poeta, Destiny Padilla, also from the Boogie Down Bronx. Give it up for Destiny Padilla.
Thank you, Mariposa. Thank you, everybody. My name is Destiny. I'm gonna do one piece for y'all. Kenepas y mangos mounted onto museum walls called history. They keep making us history. I am New Eurekan stained, Because of capitalism, when I visit my island, they don't look at me the same. Why should they? I get to call myself Puerto Rican while living with electricity that doesn't play peekaboo whenever the government wants it to. Privilege on the soles of my holeless Jordan shoes. They sold the American dream to Abuelita, but they made sure she couldn't read the terms and conditions. Literacy saved only for wealthy politicians. Bronx and Brooklyn tenements infested with remix of the island. In the summer, we flourish with barbecues and block parties. Music so loud the ears of whites hear it as white noise. To drown out their predetermined plans, they've wound us up like factory toys. If you take a people and displace them from their native land, sell them a shiny dream without too much sun or sand, but cement-filled streets that cut us open when we land, like a bridge to diversity, when what we've become is a dam flooded and floating out into the diaspora. But our asses don't want to die poor anymore. Let's use literacy as resistance, because imagine what we could do if all of us could actually read. We'd come together, help and lead our people who are in need of basic human necessity. Trauma births either death or resistance. They pump drugs into our communities, leaving us with no assistance. What's better than numbing the pain when our real home is kept at a distance? My future daughter will know her Boricua blood carries magic in its existence. Thank you.
Gracias, Destiny. Gracias. Mi gente, welcome to hour 2 of our Free Puerto Rico telethon. Estamos aquí. I want to call up to stage Manuel Rivera. I want to call up to stage Normairán Pérez. I want to call up to stage Jocelyn Velázquez. I want to call up Carlos Vega, Ariel Hernandez, Ramon Nenadich. We have an all-star panel coming up right now. Mi gente, Rosselló had the nerve to come to New York City today. So we're gonna do what our primos and primas in Puerto Rico did a few years back. When I say Ricky, tú dices fuera. Ricky! Fuera! Ricky! Fuera! Ricky! Fuera! Mi gente, coming to the stage now from Puerto Riqueños Unidos en Acción, el licenciado Manuel Rivera.
¡Viva Puerto Rico libre! Yankee go home! I have all this talent here. I get very emotional. It's great seeing all of you here fighting for Puerto Rico. And that's what we're supposed to do, right? Because we have somebody in there that came from Puerto Rico, and was as Ricky Rosselló, that did not have the courage to stay away from us. And we had to do what we needed to do, that was to get up and leave the place when he started talking. So we always gonna have to confront this type of people, but we can never stop fighting for the cause. And like I tell everyone, and I told John Melendez, the head of the Junta Nacionalista, our struggle for Puerto Rico has to be from the point of view of our nationalism. I don't care whether you are a religious person, but if you're going to fight for our independence, you have to be a religious nationalist. If you are a socialist, you have to be a socialist nationalist. If you are a capitalist, you have to be a nationalist capitalist, because that's the only way that we're going to attain our independence. We're fighting for our identity, our national identity, because otherwise we're going to disappear. Our culture is going to disappear, and we cannot allow that to happen. So every time that you go out there, identify yourself as a nationalist, as a Puerto Rican nationalist, because there is no other way that we're going to keep our struggle going. After all these great people talking here, I'm not going to take a lot of time of yourself, and I'm going to see the rest of my time to some other brothers and sisters that are here to speak. But the only thing I have to tell you is I remember being here many years ago. I was with Charlie Muller in that corner, and it was Filiberto Ojeda Rios here as well. And one of the things that impressed me about what he said is that they are entertaining us. And when he was talking about that they are entertaining us, is the same thing that is happening in Congress now with the issue of Puerto Rico. But that is not the only, it was not the only one that said they keep entertaining us. In Spanish he said, nos están entreteniendo. In 1952, the nationalists went to Congress and said the same thing, they're entertaining us, right? And today they're doing the same thing. I remember being in the house of Rafael Cancel Miranda, and he said the same thing. So we have to be careful about supporting this process that is going on now, because the only thing that we can claim is our independence, our sovereignty powers. And I just got tapped on the shoulder, and I thought that I haven't spoken of, but I like to tell you that I love you. I think we should go and continue what we're doing, and let's fight.
Gracias, Manuel. Mi gente, Lolita Lebrón, Isabel Rosado, Dilcia Pagán. La mujer puertorriqueña es una fuerza tremenda. Puerto Rican women are an incredible force of nature, and we have two forces of nature with us today. Next up is Norma Irán Pérez of Call to Action for Puerto Rico.
Buenas tardes, compañeros y compañeras. Aunque ya me siento de la diáspora, me voy a expresar a ustedes en español. Y quiero comenzar con una consigna, como siempre. ¡Independencia! 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 ¿Cuándo es? ¿Cuándo es? Tenemos que buscar la manera de buscar la convergencia entre todos los sectores independentistas. La palabra unidad es importante, pero realmente lo que tenemos que buscar es en qué lugar, en dónde podemos convergir y tener una conversación que sea consistente de todos nosotras y nosotres aquí en la diáspora y en Puerto Rico, donde podamos buscar una forma de conseguir la independencia de Puerto Rico. No es como le llaman, buscar la descolonización, porque ya le han dado el nombre de descolonización de diferentes formas. Es buscar la descolonización para la independencia. No es la descolonización para la estadidad no es un proceso de descolonización. No es una soberanía, porque tampoco, soberanía con ayuda o con alguna asociación con los Estados Unidos, porque tampoco lo es. Nunca hemos sido independientes, así que el proceso de autocolonización tiene que ser uno por la independencia, para las puertorriqueñas, los puertorriqueños que están en la diáspora y que están en el archipiélago de Puerto Rico. En a Call to Action nos hemos dado a la tarea de hacer varias actividades más bien educativas, de los medios sociales hasta en diferentes foros, pero la campaña más importante que llevamos en los últimos 6 meses es la campaña de Puerto Rico No For Sale. Todos ustedes saben lo que está pasando en Puerto Rico con la Ley 60, cómo están llegando se está aburguesando la isla con todas estas personas que están llegando a la isla, vendiendo nuestra isla, vendiendo nuestros recursos naturales. Si van ustedes ahora mismo a la isla, es imposible, al archipiélago, imposible conseguir vivienda a un costo razonable. Así que tenemos que, como dijo el compañero Ben al principio en su ponencia por Pro Libertad, les invitamos a que nos sigan en las redes sociales. tenemos varias actividades, hemos hecho varias campañas educativas, pero no solamente educativas, necesitamos hacer campañas de acción. We have to do direct actions to stop promesa, to eliminate la Junta, to eliminate late Act 16, late 20 and late 22. Hay que hacer acciones directas, tenemos que buscar una convergencia, como les dije anteriormente, para que Puerto Rico sea libre, que se vaya la Junta, que se vayan todos estos criptómanos y todos estos influencers que se están quedando con el país. Sin nada más, les voy a dejar al micrófono a Ben, pero terminamos con una consigna. ¡Que se vaya, que se vaya! Que se vayan, que se vayan, con sus chavos, que se vayan, que se vayan, que se vayan. Que se vayan, que se vayan. Independencia. Independencia. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Norma Irán. One more time, one more force of nature from Se Acabaron las Promesas, Jocelyn Velázquez.
Hola, saludos a todas, a todos y a todes. Antes que nada quería darles las gracias y pedir que se den un fuerte aplauso todas y todos ustedes, porque ustedes son gente que sigue luchando, que sigue persistiendo y que llevan años, muchos de ustedes, no únicamente luchando por la independencia de Puerto Rico, sino en solidaridad con la lucha por la independencia de Puerto Rico. Reconocemos, admiramos a todas esas compañeras y compañeros de otros países y de otras luchas que siempre llegan y que siempre son solidarios, así que mis respetos a todos ustedes, para empezar. Como izquierda, como independentistas, tenemos un gran reto, Corilla, y el reto es cómo vamos a tumbar el régimen colonial en Puerto Rico. Eso suena como que duro, lo podemos hacer, pero para hacerlo necesitamos más unidad. Y cuando digo unidad, no estoy hablando de que las organizaciones caminen todas de la misma mano, porque eso no va a pasar. Y no es necesario tampoco. Lo que sí necesitamos es que podamos hablar en un mismo idioma y empujar todos hacia el mismo lado a la misma vez. Y en esa ecuación la diáspora es indispensable. Ustedes son una caja de resonancia de nuestras demandas, de nuestras peleas, de nuestros reclamos al gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Ustedes están más cerca del imperio que nosotros. Así que en la medida y en la capacidad de que ustedes expresen nuestras voces, somos más eficientes. Y como movimiento, si tenemos algo importante que buscar, es la eficiencia. Tenemos que buscar la manera de que nuestras voces se junten y que nos convirtamos en un problema político para los Estados Unidos. En la medida que nos convirtamos en ese problema político, ellos se van a ver obligados a escuchar nuestros reclamos y hacer algo al respecto. Mientras no lo seamos, desafortunadamente nuestra lucha va a seguir como hoy, estancada en los archivos de la ONU y peor aún, teniendo que lidiar con sabandijas como Ricky Rosselló y Beatriz la Tonta en foros internacionales como estos, en los que no deberían estar participando estas personas. Todo esto para que, si de alguna manera esta actividad debe servir de algo, es que tiene que ser una renovación de nuestros votos del amor a nuestra patria y del compromiso de derrumbar el colonialismo en Puerto Rico de una sola vez. Tenemos que salir de aquí con el compromiso que el próximo año esta actividad va a ser 3 veces más grande, que vamos a mover más gente adentro de la ONU y que allí van a haber más voces nuestras hablando sobre nuestra emancipación, que nos vamos a convertir en una fuerza política fuerte, pujante, que le diga al Congreso de los Estados Unidos que no puede seguirle pichando al problema de la descolonización de Puerto Rico. Y sé que estoy hablando mucho, y para tratar de cerrar rapidito quiero añadir una cosa. Se está hablando mucho del borrador del proyecto de Nidia Velázquez y Alexandria Ocasio. Eso es otro duérmete nene. Ese es otro juego del colonialismo para tenernos jodidos. Cada vez que vienen las vistas, se inventan un borrador, van a Puerto Rico, hacen 4 mítines, se reúnen con 2 o 3 y después de eso aquí no pasó nada. La independencia de Puerto Rico no nos va a dar el Congreso, que quede claro. El Congreso de Estados Unidos no nos va a hacer independientes. Va a ser nuestra lucha, nuestro sudor y nuestra sangre la que nos va a garantizar la independencia. Así que muchas gracias. Que viva Puerto Rico libre y socialista. Se acabaron las promesas.
Se acabaron las promesas. Muchas gracias, Jocelyn. Up to the stage from el Movimiento Independentista Nacional Ostosiano, Carlos Vega.
Buenas tardes, compañeros y compañeras. Un saludo fraternal. Como han dicho ya los compañeros que me han antecedido, y sobre todo las 2 compañeras, Jocelyn y Norma Irán, es necesario que nosotros logremos caminar juntos. No de la mano, como ellas decían, pero caminar juntos hacia la independencia. Hemos estado asistiendo a las vistas de la ONU ya hace 50 años. Y tampoco, como decía Jocelyn, el Congreso no nos va a dar la independencia, pero tampoco las Naciones Unidas. Depende de nosotros, como decía la compañera, que le creemos una crisis al imperio, que le creemos las condiciones para obligarlos a que nos den la independencia. Porque nosotros lo provoquemos, porque nosotros hayamos luchado para eso. Nosotros no venimos a las Naciones Unidas para decirles que nos den la independencia, porque ellos no lo van a hacer. Nos toca a nosotros. Y lo vamos a hacer con la ayuda de ellos, que es lo que le pedimos, o sin la ayuda de ellos. Porque nosotros nos merecemos la independencia. Ya desde y es importante señalar la solidaridad que tenemos los caribeños. Aquí hemos tenido a los compañeros hablando sobre Cuba, sobre República Dominicana, Palestina. La solidaridad internacional es la que va a provocar que el imperio entre en una crisis con el caso de Puerto Rico. Y nosotros, nuestra lucha a diario, en las calles, en donde quiera que laboremos, en nuestros lugares de comunidad, en nuestras comunidades, tenemos que seguir luchando y tenemos que seguir viniendo, claro, aquí a denunciar lo que está pasando, pero no esperemos que nos den la libertad, la independencia, las Naciones Unidas. La tenemos que ganar nosotros. ¡Que viva Puerto Rico libre!
Thank you, Carlos. Now, from el Movimiento Unión Soberanista, Ariel Hernández.
Gracias, Ben, y muy buenas tardes a todos. Muchos saludos a todos los que están aquí. De verdad que es un placer poder compartir en este parque tan emblemático cerca de ese edificio de las Naciones Unidas, donde se supone, ¿verdad?, que se acoja el caso de Puerto Rico y su proceso de descolonización. Obviamente ya ustedes aquí saben mucho de lo que se ha dicho, todo el mundo conoce sobre la situación colonial. Yo solamente quiero hablar de mi experiencia, de la experiencia que hoy tuve en ese salón y que en gran medida ha transformado mi corazón. Yo nunca pensé que la lucha de independencia se podía lograr en el idioma inglés. Y óigame bien, muchas personas independentistas en Puerto Rico, cuando tratamos de expresarnos en el idioma inglés para que el gringo nos entienda, nos escuche, a veces nos rechazan porque quieren que hablemos en el idioma español como un método de resistencia. Pero yo quiero destacar algunas de las ponencias que se hablaron en ese salón que a mí por así decirlo, me volaron la mente. Empezando por el compañero Benjamín Ramos. Benjamín Ramos, como ustedes conocen, es un líder tremendo aquí en Nueva York. Y ese se comunica en el idioma inglés con una fuerza increíble. Y eso a mí me llama la atención. También quiero reconocer compañero Michael Urayoan Colony, que conocí en el día de hoy, que a pesar de dominar el español, se comunicó en el idioma inglés. Hijo de una persona norteamericana, residente de Vieques, que se puertorriqueñizó, porque entiende la situación colonial de Puerto Rico y la vive día a día. Y eso me llegó profundamente. Quiero reconocer aquí a Paua, que con su poesía en el idioma inglés nos voló la mente allá en el Comité de Descolonización, pero en el idioma del colonizador. Quiero reconocer también la forma en que habló la compañera María Isa, que ustedes escucharon aquí, de Minnesota. ¿Quién pensaría que una mujer de segunda generación pudiese hablar así? Que pudiese decirle al gringo, en el idioma del gringo, que se tenía que ir de la patria, que su patria es Puerto Rico, a pesar de que es una mujer de segunda generación. Eso nadie lo puede negar. La puertorriqueñidad es algo que se hereda, que se siente, que se vive. Y yo me quedo asombrado de que aquí en Nueva York hay una comunidad puertorriqueña resistente y que en el idioma inglés, por hablar inglés, no deja de ser puertorriqueño. ¿Qué es lo que no entienden los gringuitos puertorriqueños que van allí a hablar a favor de la estadidad? No entienden la historia, no entienden la conexión, no entienden que Puerto Rico vive, que es el tambor, lo caribeño, lo que corre por las venas. Eso no se puede perder. La cultura puertorriqueña es algo que debemos cultivar y que no podemos perder. También quiero reconocer como compañeros del Partido Nacionalista que nacieron aquí, que dominan el inglés como su primer idioma y se expresan de una manera elocuente. Al compañero John Meléndez y Richard López, que hablaron de manera fenomenal en el idioma inglés pidiendo la desconexión de Puerto Rico. Y no me puedo quedar callado porque aquí hay que darle un aplauso increíble a la señora que habló a nombre del pueblo palestino, que conoce nuestra historia mejor que nosotros, la doctora Rabab Abdul Hadi, que se votó también en el idioma inglés. Y la compañera que la veo, Mariposa, y todas aquellas de ustedes que hacen poesía desde Pedro Pietri para acá. Y es lo único que yo puedo decir. Los puertorriqueños que fueron al Congreso vivían aquí en Nueva York y atacaron al Congreso ya residiendo en Puerto Rico. O sea, Puerto Rico y Nueva York tenemos que seguir esta conexión. No vamos a descolonizar a Puerto Rico sin la ayuda de ustedes. Puerto Rico los necesita. La gente de Nueva York, la gente de Minnesota, la gente de Florida, la gente de Washington DC. Hay un movimiento importante que se ha dado, la unidad puertorriqueña. Hay un frente independentista que se está dando aquí, que tenemos que cultivar. La gente que nace en Puerto Rico, en Estados Unidos, de raíces puertorriqueñas, siguen siendo puertorriqueños, algo que no entendemos en Puerto Rico. Yo no quiero terminar sin brevemente decir el peligro que representa la ley promesa, que fue parte del mensaje que yo traje ante las Naciones Unidas, y es el hecho de que lo que atravesó las naciones indígenas en los Estados Unidos es lo mismo que le está pasando a Puerto Rico. La ley promesa, a nuestro juicio, por lo menos desde mi punto de vista, se parece al Indian Removal Act. Lo que está pasando en Puerto Rico es la versión moderna del Indian Removal Act. No quiero abundar más sobre eso porque yo sé que el tiempo corre, pero no podemos permitir eso. Tenemos que unirnos y tenemos que seguir luchando por la libertad de la patria, que es lo único que no tenemos. ¡Que viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Que viva! Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Ariel. Mi gente, don Pedro Albizu Campos, Filiberto Ojeda Ríos, Ángel Rodríguez Cristóbal. We have lost many brothers and sisters and family building the Puerto Rican nation. And we need to take a minute to recognize that building this nation has cost us lives. It has been a form of repression that has been used against our people. And I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the martyrs. And when I say the name of one of our martyrs, you will say presente. Don Pedro Albizu Campos. Presente. Filiberto Ojeda Ríos. Presente. Ángel Rodríguez Cristóbal. Presente. Let's build that nation. Up to the stage next is del Estado Nacional Soberano de Borinquén, Ramón Nenadich.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todas las personas presentes, sobre todo a esa juventud maravillosa que tenemos aquí, que es nuestro futuro. Mi nombre es Ramón Nenadich y represento al gobierno provisional del Estado Nacional Soberano de Borinquen. Mucha gente no entiende qué es eso y nos dicen que nosotros lo que queremos es volver a la época de los taínos, andar en nu por las calles y vivir en bohíos. Eso no es. Lo que nosotros estamos planteando es que antes de la invasión española había un gobierno legítimo en nuestra patria, en nuestra tierra, y ese gobierno tenía sus leyes, sus tradiciones y su cultura, y gobernaba sobre todo el archipiélago nuestro. Cuando los españoles nos invadieron, que fue una invasión ilegal, ese gobierno estuvo resistiendo por casi 80 años en contra de los españoles. Y los que no conocen nuestra historia no saben que hasta la década de 1580 hubo resistencia indígena en nuestra patria. Los españoles nunca tuvieron soberanía sobre nuestra tierra, nunca la tuvieron, se la apropiaron de manera ilegal. Y cuando se la traspasaron a los gringos en el 1898, le hicieron un traspaso ilegal. Y los gringos, los yanquis, nunca han tenido soberanía sobre nuestra tierra. Su presencia en nuestra patria es una presencia ilegal e ilegítima. Y nosotros en el Estado Nacional Soberano de Borinquen no participamos de ninguna manera en legitimar la presencia ilegal de los Estados Unidos en nuestra patria. Hemos hecho como pueblo una resistencia heroica durante más de 500 años. Lucha armada desde Agüeybaná, el Grito del Are, los nacionalistas en el 50, Filiberto Ojeda y los macheteros, clandestinamente, todo lo hemos hecho. No hemos logrado lo que hemos querido, nuestra libertad y la restauración de nuestra soberanía. El Estado Nacional Soberano de Borinquen propone una campaña activa de resistencia civil pacífica en contra del gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Y esa campaña se puede hacer tanto aquí, en los Estados Unidos, como en nuestro archipiélago. Finalmente, ya para terminar, quiero traer una advertencia que la planteé también en el Comité de Descolonización. Sí, ya voy. Una advertencia. Tenemos que tener mucho cuidado con ese proyecto de estatus para Puerto Rico, porque ese proyecto lo que está buscando es eliminar el Estado libre asociado colonial y traer una neocolonia a través de un pacto de libre asociación dirigido precisamente por los llamados populares soberanistas, a cuya cabeza está Aníbal Acevedo Vilá. Es importante comenzar una campaña para detener ese proyecto. Muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias, Ramon. We are transitioning to our other MC. We want to call Suzanne Adley here. We want to call Yamir Shaul to the stage. We want to call Roger Wareham to the stage. We want to call Max Evans to the stage. We need Sarah Loebman to the stage. Mi gente, USA, out of Puerto Rico. USA!
Out of Puerto Rico! USA! Out of Puerto Rico! USA! Out of Puerto Rico!
And with that, I hand it over to Norma Iram.
What do we want? Independence. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? When do we want it? Now. I can't hear you. You don't want it. What do we want? When do we want it? Now. What do we want? When do we want it? Now. Fantastico. Energy. I need that energy, people. It's 6:44. We're almost over, but we are happy to be here. Estamos a punto de terminar. Voy a llamar a la tarima a la compañera Solimar Ortiz de Poetas en Marcha. La compañera está aquí. Gracias por estar con nosotras y con nosotros. Saludos. Para mí es todo un honor estar aquí con ustedes, de parte de Poetas en Marcha, una organización que nació en la calle, los Poetas en Resistencia. Se ha hablado mucho de la historia y hay una pregunta que nos hizo Ramón Emeterio Betances hace varios siglos atrás, donde dice: ¿qué pasa con los puertorriqueños que no se rebelan? Y yo le contesto: Betances,
Aquí están las rebeldes que se rebelan. Un siglo más tarde, con latigazos en la espalda, con las llagas sangrientas del pasado, entre la utopía de vernos al espejo, como nación de pie, nunca de rodillas. Así estamos tus hijas, rebeldes con conciencia. Betances, tus rebeldes están en la huelga, con Julia en el pecho, Lolita en los labios y Blanca en el puño alerta. Tus hijas estamos en la lucha, pisando cada punto cardinal de la matria, acampando, defendiendo, gritando, amando nuestra tierra. Somos todas, muchas las rebeldes en la fila de guerra. Betances, estamos de frente a la fortaleza, despoblando los corruptos que amenazan con regalarnos. Contra el patriarcado y el machismo nos soltamos las cadenas. Tus hijas se rebelan contra la junta, frente a los bancos, puños cerrados en los portones del alma mater, listas para la contienda. No hay garrotero que calle nuestro grito, es nuestra la hora. No empuñamos rosarios, estamos de frente con estelas. Nos vestimos de Ana Belén y nos lavamos la conciencia, defendiendo la cría que ha de guiar nuestra tregua. Betances, tus hijas estamos cruzando fronteras, en Playuela, en Peñuela, en la Yupi, en la calle, en la ONU, en la bandera, en las niñas que ven las estudiantes luchando por la patria. Aquí están tus hijas en pie de lucha, rebeldes indomables, altivas y dispuestas a ofrendar vida y hacienda por la libertad de la patria. Aquí estamos, Betances, rebeldes, indómitas, libres desde el vientre de un pueblo que seguirá las consignas y caminará de frente a la victoria, empuñando una sola estrella. Betances, las puertorriqueñas sí se rebelan. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Solimar Ortiz. Poetas en Marcha desde Puerto Rico, ¿verdad, Solimar? Hey, hey, ho, ho, imperialism gotta go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, imperialism gotta go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Imperialism gotta go. Thank you. We are here, and the next group of people are people in solidarity with the independence of Puerto Rico. So I'm going to call a compañera Susan Adley from the Allah Wanda Palestinian Right to Return that she's going to address tonight.
Thank you. Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Puerto Rico! Viva, viva Puerto Rico! Viva, viva Intifada! Viva, viva Intifada! I first want to give all of you solidarity greetings from the National Lawyers Guild. I am the new president of the National Lawyers Guild, and our colleagues stood with you today at the United Nations. And I want to let you know that our support for Puerto Rico is as strong and ongoing, and we are going to do our best to continue to be in solidarity with you. But I actually came today as a longtime organizer in the Palestinian Arab community in New York and in Chicago. And Al-Auda New York is a 22-year-old organization that grew out of the Palestinian Arab community in the boroughs of New York City and in the outskirts of New York City. And when we came together as youth in this country to try to uplift the voices of the Palestinian resistance, we were met with repression from the US government. And we were met with the racism of the US left, who told us that our movement was one to be criminalized. But you know, it was our leaders in the Puerto Rican community of New York and Chicago who always stood with us and who mentored us and to help us navigate our place in the justice movement in New York City and in Chicago and around the world. And in 2001, Rafael Cancel Miranda came to New York to help us lead one of the largest first marches that we ever organized in New York, a historic moment. And then in 2003, we traveled to Palestine with comrades from Puerto Rico, with comrades from many different organizations working for Vieques, with comrades from Pro Libertad and organizations like Malcolm X Grassroots Movement and CUNY Student Liberation Action Movement. And we went to Palestine to show the world the ways in which our struggles were connected. We were focusing on the plight of political prisoners in Palestine and in Puerto Rico and in the United States. And while we were there, I remember a moment where we stood together, we raised the Palestinian and Puerto Rican flags and marched to confront a group of Israeli occupying, colonizing soldiers as they tried to impose a curfew on one of the Palestinian towns. And that image became the front page of El Diario the next day, showing people the deep link of our movements, which is anti-racist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, and is one that uplifts the voices of resistance and rejects the imperial notion that our resistance is one to be criminalized. Our resistance is not terrorism. Our resistance is beautiful. And the movement for Puerto Rico and Palestine is a gift to this world, and it's a gift to the anti-imperial struggle. So we commit to teach our youth this history and to continue to be in active solidarity with you all. Gracias.
Thank you, compañera Susan. From Puerto Rico to the Palestine, stop U.S. war machine. From Puerto Rico to the Palestine, stop U.S. war machine. Thank you so much. I'm gonna ask a compañero Ralph Pointer from the New Abolitionist Movement and Lines 2 organization to address tonight and talk about the solidarity with Puerto Rico independence.
Thank you so much. And first off, I want to say thank you to the organization that has this demonstration of unity. Too few demonstrations of unity are held by various organizations. And so, everything has been said. What can I possibly say to you? I say to you things that I say to myself when I repeat what others have said, things that stick with me. And I start with our dear departed sister, Lynn Stewart. Many years ago, when she was speaking on the West Coast, she said, "Let us remind ourselves when we speak of Puerto Rico, we're speaking of our neighbors. Let us remind ourselves when we speak of Puerto Rico, we're speaking of our friends. And finally, when we speak of Puerto Rico, we're speaking of our families and relatives. They are us, and we are them. And we must make sure that when we talk of unity, there is a process we use in unity. There are various groups here, many groups here. And to have unity, each group has to find out what the other group's basic demands are and put them as demands in our organization. Not at the end, but right down front with the other demands we have. The independence of Puerto Rico has been a demand of our organizations for a long, long time, because for a long, long time, we have been involved with our families, our relatives, and our friends. This is an issue. And so when we say we want unity, we have to say, how do we get unity? And unity comes with a unity of purpose, a unity of liberation. And the other person I think of at this moment who made a statement, She wrote a book about it. It was Disaster Capitalism. Naomi Klein. Now I know what she meant when she said disaster capitalism. What she meant was whenever there's a disaster, capitalists will take advantage of it. But I take those words and I say, I think of something else. Whenever there is a capitalist making money for a small group of people, it is disaster for many others. This is what disaster capitalism is all about. Wherever there is capitalism, there is disaster for most of us. And so basically, we must fight for the end of this capitalist system, and we must fight for the support of the issues of all of us together to fight and bring this capitalism down. Thank you for the time. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, compañero. Albizu, maestro, Puerto Rico será nuestro. Lolita, maestra, Borinquen será nuestra. Albizu, maestro, Puerto Rico será nuestro. Lolita, maestra, Borinquen será nuestra. Quiero llamar al podio. I want to ask a compañero Jahim Shabur from Vencereros Brigade to come. You see? Ah, he's right here.
¡Ey, que viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Que viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Que viva Cuba! ¡Que viva la revolución cubana! ¡Que viva Fidel! So my name is Yamir Chabor. I'm here representing an organization called the Venceremos Brigade, La Brigada Venceremos, which is one of the oldest Cuba solidarity organizations in the United States, where we have sent U.S. citizens to Cuba for over 50 years in order to break this genocidal blockade. Can I hear Cuba sí, bloqueo no? Cuba sí? Cuba sí? Cuba sí? Yes, you know, it feels very, I feel a certain way, even though I'm not Cuban, you know, I'm Colombian, but I feel a certain way having the Cuban and Puerto Rican flag with me, knowing that there's that famous poem that goes around that Cuba and Puerto Rico are the two wings of the same bird. Son dos alas del mismo pájaro. And also just the fact that both of these flags were created at the same time. And it's understanding that, you know, we think that Cuba has a blockade, you know, economically, just because Cuba 60 years ago decided to take a different direction. Cuba 60 years ago decided to be sovereign, decided to have a socialist revolution where they were providing the basic needs in education, in healthcare, in culture, and exporting that revolution worldwide. And this is the same reason why the United States doesn't allow Puerto Rico to be independent, just because of the amount of influence Puerto Rico, a free Puerto Rico, would be for the people of the third world. So, and also Puerto Rico as well. I had a brother right here, I think Richard, right here, that told me Puerto Rico also has a blockade. You know, like, it has a blockade of being a colony and not having that sovereignty, that freedom, that economic freedom to build with other people in the third world, to build with its Latin American brothers and sisters. Okay, I gotta cut it soon. Pero sí. Sí, qué orgullo estar acá. Voy a acabar en español, ¿me entiendes? Porque también como colombiano, ayer triunfamos contra un gobierno, un narcogobierno paramilitar, que son unos lacayos del imperialismo yanqui, y que ahora Colombia ha hecho historia y va a tener su primer gobierno popular, su primer vicepresidenta afro, negra, Francia Márquez, y nuestro presidente ex guerrillero, con orgullo, Gustavo Petro. Y quiero decir esto como una persona que nunca pensé que este día iba a llegar a Colombia, que íbamos a tener un gobierno popular del pueblo, y ese más firma más que nunca
que Puerto Rico también puede ser libre, que Puerto Rico también puede tumbar estos colonialistas y puede sacar a estos yanquis del Caribe. ¡Que viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Que viva la Revolución Cubana! ¡Que viva Latinoamérica unida!
¡Viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Fuera yanqui del Caribe! ¡Viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Viva Puerto Rico libre! ¡Fuera yanqui del Caribe! Muchas gracias, compañeros, y felicidades por esa victoria del pueblo. So, llamo aquí a la tarima. I'm calling el compañero Max Evan Aguayo from the Party of Socialism and Liberation. Thank you for joining us.
Gracias. Okay, so first off, I just want to let y'all know I came straight from work over here, and I want to shout out working class solidarity will be very important in any movement which will free Puerto Rico and working class solidarity, because the majority of Puerto Ricans are from the working class. My family is not from that far from me, from the Lower East Side. I grew up between, LES. Yeah, I grew up in between here in New Jersey. I've been out in Jersey now for like 20 years. But I'm gonna talk a little bit about the history and how it connects to today's struggle for independence. From the moment that the colonizers landed on the island of Borinquen, our people have been displaced. The cutthroat capitalism that they ensued brought slavery and genocided the native Taino Indians. You know, there was not genocide because it still exists in our blood, but there was a mass repression, you know, trying to exploit the people for their gold, exploit the people for their resources. Years and years went by. There were cries for independence, 1868, El Grito de Lares. Our people stood up against the Spanish. We came out, we fought, but we were still repressed. Right before 1898 came, the United States went to war with Spain. So basically the colonies changed hands. The United States took Puerto Rico and put them under a state of colonization again, while the Spanish were about to give them their freedom. After all this, the United States gave us quote-unquote citizenship, in the sense that they're gonna give us citizenship, but they're gonna take so much from us, because they implemented the Jones Act. They put tariffs on all goods coming into Puerto Rico. So bring it to today. The 40s and 50s, a lot of the immigrants came from Puerto Rico because of the lack of economic opportunity in Puerto Rico. And that is war in itself, the lack of economic opportunity. Like my grandparents came here in 1950. Why? Because there was no opportunity in Puerto Rico to make money. So they made it a big thing about coming to New York, you know, trying to, you know, make money out here, this and that. And at the same time, 1950, Puerto Ricanos had an uprising. We tried to gain our independence, yet we were met by repression. They dropped bombs on us. Let me end it now, because I'm being... I never learned, like, growing up, I never learned about my culture. My family, I spoke English. We didn't learn about bomba en plena, you know. We still have it, but like, I see the flag flying right here. We always were taught to be proud of that right there. That's our people. That's our flag. That's what we have inside of us. We have our own unique identity, and we are taught. Not like, you know, some kids, you know, they have Italian and Irish, whatever. Oh, I'm American. When you Puerto Rican, you might be third generation, fourth generation. You saying you're Puerto Rican. All right, let me end it here. Que viva Puerto Rico libre. Que viva el socialista.
Free, free, Puerto Rico, free, free. Free, free. Llamo a que venga a compartir con nosotros. I'm gonna call compañero Roger Wareham from the December 12th movement. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to not be tapped on my shoulder. But I did. This is a preemptive tap. The relationship between Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rican independence movement, and the Black liberation struggle has always been strong. I'm a member of an organization called the December 12th movement. I was also a former political prisoner with a group called the New York 8, who were prosecuted under criminal charges by Rudy Giuliani when he was a U.S. attorney. And maybe 3 weeks after we beat him in 1985, the 15 compañeros were arrested for the so-called expropriation, Wells Fargo expropriation in Hartford. In 1988, we met with Filiberto Ojeda, who had just been released from preventive detention, and he presented a proposal for a campaign called Freedom Now to bring the issue of, not Puerto Rican, but U.S.-held political prisoners and prisoners of war before the United Nations. And that spelled our participation in the United Nations. It brought to mind what Malcolm had talked about in terms of black folks taking our situation to the World Court before the United Nations with no illusion that the United Nations was going to free us or that the United Nations can free Puerto Rico. What the United Nations provides is a sounding ground, an opportunity to develop support for whatever you're doing nationally. If you're not doing any work in the streets, you're not going to, support from the United Nations means nothing, and it won't happen if it isn't work here in the streets. So that's why it's very important that people came out today. Our experience in the United Nations, we went there from 1989 right through to today. In 2001, we went to the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, and to lobby for the UN to declare that the transatlantic slave trade and slavery were crimes against humanity and that reparations were due the descendants of the victims. We took 400 people there, we lobbied, we won countries over, and there was that declaration, the first international recognition of that. It gave an enormous boost to the reparations movement of what was going on in the United States and around the world. I only raise that to say, if we continue our work consistently around the demand for Puerto Rico's independence, we can make that happen in terms of gaining international support and pressure on the United States. We just have to do it. Que viva Puerto Rico libre!
Que viva Puerto Rico libre. From the mountains to the sea, Puerto Rico will be free. From the mountains to the sea, Puerto Rico will be free. Thank you. We have our last speaker before we have some music. And la borinqueña, our compañera, always present in solidarity with Puerto Rico from the Socialist Workers' Party, Sarah Lubman.
As Norma said, my name is Sarah Lobman. I'm the Socialist Workers' Party's candidate for U.S. Senate from New York, and I spoke this morning at the UN hearings in favor of the fight for independence of Puerto Rico. Over the last several days, I've had a lot of people, right up through Norma, thank me for the solidarity my party offers to the struggle in Puerto Rico. One point I often make is, for us, it's not a question of solidarity. This is a fight that's important to working people in the United States as well. It's inconceivable that workers and farmers and other toilers in the U.S. can win our freedom without being part of the fight for an end to one of the world's last colonies. So that's a very important fight. The second point I wanted to make is that if you look at both the conditions in Puerto Rico, which are especially bad because of the colonial status, and the conditions in the U.S., you can see they're getting worse for working people. Inflation, drug overdoses, jobs that pay less and less. I speak from experience here. Smaller and smaller percentage of workers who are in unions and able to defend ourselves. Crazy schedules that cut into time with our families and destroy our bodies. But the other thing, if you look, you can see that people start to fight back, whether it's truck drivers and teachers in Puerto Rico, or coal miners and oil workers in the United States. There is a force in both Puerto Rico and the United States that has the power and the capacity, through struggling, to transform ourselves the way the working people in Cuba did. And to organize the fight for independence, and to organize the fight to take power out of the hands of the capitalist class here in Puerto Rico and elsewhere in the world. So I thank you very much. Those who organized this rally, I thank you. You organized a very tight program. I'm very impressed. And thank you.
Muchas gracias, compañera. Thank you. ¿Dónde están los boricuas que defienden lo suyo? ¿Dónde están? Aquí. ¿Dónde están? Aquí. ¿Dónde están las boricuas que defienden lo suyo? ¿Dónde están? ¿Dónde están? Y los boricuas son los compañeros y las compañeras también solidarios con nosotros. Esos son boricuas y boricuas también. La solidaridad internacional, la solidaridad caribeña, también son hermanos boricuas y de nosotros, de nuestra comunidad. Ahora los voy a dejar con música y con Ana. Vamos a celebrar, vamos a cerrar con música como debe de ser.
Antes que la bruja y Bombayó, vamos a darle un aplauso a Bombayó, el componente de él. Let's give Bombayó a round of applause. They were excellent today, keeping our culture alive. After their performance, I want everybody, and La Bruja is going to lead us to sing La Borinqueña.
Thank you so much. You know, for those Puerto Ricanos that are on the fence about whether we should be independent or whether we should have statehood, I ask them to ask Hawaiian natives how they feel about Hawaii being a state now. If you could find one there, we cannot become a state. We must remain independent and fight for this independence. No matter what, I feel it in my heart. No matter what happens, I feel that strength of liberation of our ancestors, what they wanted, what our leaders, our revolutionary leaders, what they preached. I listened to those words. But anyway, para cerrar, mira a penny, because that's a good omen right there. All right, vamos. Let's start with the Yuba, right? Puerto Rico, such sad emotion, overrun by colonization. Always the government showing, even by paper towel throwing, that the hatred is growing. The displaced are screaming, the shit waste is steaming. I'd like to try independence. I'd like to try independence. If we don't fight, just forget it. If we don't fight, just forget it. America, I'd like to be America, with policies not run by greed, a paradise free from America. But we all know they've abused our rights, fought every war that they go fight. And autonomy sounds just so extreme, but statehood is only a pipe dream. They don't tell the truth in America. We have been duped by America, yanked from the roots by America. We're forced to roost in America, treated with spite, read our last rites, left without lights. America. Puerto Rico me llaman, I am Puerto Rico. That is what you call me. Yo me llamo Puerto Rico. If you came from me, you will go from me. You will come to me. You will grow from me. Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. We are not poor, but rico. We are not yours, but equal. Ok, ahora para cerrar, la borinqueña, the original borinqueña.
I have a petition to decolonize the Puerto Rican national anthem on change.org because that it starts there with the rhetoric, you know, what they force our children to say, closing our schools, closing our hospitals. It's just, the abuse is so sick, but we must remain steadfast.
Despierta, borinqueño, que han dado la señal. Despierta de ese sueño que es hora de luchar. A ese llamal patriótico no arde tu corazón. Ven, no será simpático el ruido del cañón. Nosotros queremos la libertad. Nuestros machetes nos la darán. Vámonos, borinqueños, vámonos ya. Ansiosa la libertad, la libertad, la libertad, la libertad, la libertad.
¡Viva Puerto Rico libre!
Gracias. La lucha sigue. Ana, thank you so much.
Un aplauso para la bruja. Beautiful rendition of our national anthem. This concludes the end of our program. I do want to mention that Oscar Lopez Rivera, national hero and former political prisoner, he's very ill. We're hoping he doesn't have COVID, but he was not able to attend the hearing today because of it. He has been traveling all over the country and also through Latin America, taking the word of the Puerto Rican people to free Puerto Rico. So he wants to apologize for not being here today, but he has no voice, so he's in bed, resting. He was in Los Angeles, he participated in the La Cumbre de las Américas and spoke there. So I want to thank all of you for coming here today, and I hope you enjoyed today's program. And I want to thank all the speakers and all the solidarity messages that every person submitted today. And we hope we continue to work together, because really our struggle is a long struggle. It's a prolonged struggle, but we know that people around the world have been free, and we can be free. So thank you so much. So I don't know if Bombayo wants to end it up with a little bembe for us. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Really quick, I just want to, we want to acknowledge the drum. Photographers, take a picture of that drum. Right? What you're looking at is our ancestors. This is what they left behind for us to continue our struggle. It is still here, and it reminds us that we are still here. This is real. This is not make-believe. This is who we are. Wepa. Bomba one one, que dice? Bomba one one. Everybody say. Don't stop, don't stop. Bomba. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Bomba one one, ooh yeah, bomba one one. Keep it going. The power of the drum, no one can deny. Factivation illustration shows us why. A beautiful creation made by man. I bring you a message from the motherland. People of the world, yellow, black, brown, and white rhythm comes from the heart that gives us life. Now if you listen to the drum, understand, I bring you a message from the motherland. Joy, drum, and stimulate. Energy, music from the soul is reality. Human expression and spirituality. As drums discover creativity. Now people of the world, understand, this is the message from the motherland.
Bomba one one. Bomba one one. Bomba one one. Bomba one one. Bomba one one.
Ay, Cagali.
Bomba one one.
Tuquila.
Todo el mundo es bomba one one.
Candulí. Bomba one one. Ay, ahora sí. Hoy yo me liberé. Oye, oye, oye. Bomba one one. Ay, Cagali. Ay, Candulí. Ay, ole, ole. Ay, oye, oye. Bomba one one. Ahora, ahora sí. Bomba one one. Ay, ahora sí. Bomba one one. Ay, ahora sí. Ay, la libertad.
Bomba one one.
Pero para mí. Ay, para mí, para ti. Bomba one one. Esto es. Bomba one one. Bomba. 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 Ay, mariposa. Ay, ella quiere bailar. Ay, la libertad. Bomba. Bomba. Ay, así mismo es. Bomba one one. Ay, ahora sí. Bomba one. Ahora sí. Bomba one one. ¿Qué dice? Bomba one one. Bomba one one. ¡Huepa! Bomba one one. Bomba one one. Bomba one one. Bomba. Bomba one one. Bomba one one. Bomba.
Bomba one one.
Thank you, thank you.
Seguimos con la bomba. María Isa, vamos. Ahí, una más.
Mira Margarita cómo baila mi balance, cómo baila mi balance, cómo baila mi balance. Mira Margarita cómo baila mi balance, ay la cosa bailando bomba cuando baila mi balance. Mira Margarita cómo baila mi balance, cómo baila mi balance, cómo baila mi balance.
Mira María Isa, All right.